today we're going to talk about the light-independent reactions in photosynthesis. Remember that we call the light-independent reactions by three different names. We could call them the light-independent reaction. We could call it the Calvin cycle. Or we could also call it the dark reactions. And we're going to go through this diagram down here, and you'll notice that each step is numbered. That corresponds to the description up here at the top. But I'm going to scroll down so we can really focus on this image, and we can go through these steps. So the first step of the dark reaction is for carbon dioxide to enter the cycle. But what it's going to join with, we have to go back to the last step because it's going to be a cycle, and we're going to use what we ended with. So we're going to look at this molecule right here. We have three of them, and they're called RUBP. And what I want us to do is look at this RUBP. This yellow piece, that is a phosphate. And we also have another phosphate down here. And what I want us to do is count the little gray circles which represent carbon. So on one of the RUBPs, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbons. So what's going to happen is we're going to have carbon dioxide enter the cycle. And this is going to bring in more carbon. And the first step is that an enzyme helps attach these carbon dioxide to the RUBP. And notice we're bringing in 3 carbon dioxides and we have 3 RUBP. So we're going to make these new molecules right here. And these molecules now still have those phosphates on the end, but now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons on each of our molecules. And what we want to note here is that these 3 6-carbon molecules are very unstable. So what happens right away is that they break in half and create instead 3 6-carbon molecules. So notice that we still have the same things. We still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 phosphates, and we still have the same number of carbons. But we've broken these 3 unstable to form some more stable compounds instead. And this more stable compound is called PGA, or 3-phosphoglycerate. And this 3-phosphoglycerate is going to go into the next step with us. So in order to do the next step, here is where we are going to use the energy that came from the light reactions. So one of our products of the light reactions was ATP, and the other form of energy was the NADPH. And these forms of energy are going to allow this next part to occur. So it can kind of, if you think like zap those 3 PGA molecules, and it's going to help us make our product of photosynthesis. So here, notice here it's nice and colored. On your copy, it's kind of harder to see. So you could put that starburst of energy around it. And what we have now made is G3P. And this G3P is going to be our product of photosynthesis that we are trying to make. And what G3P is, what are we making in photosynthesis? We're making a carbohydrate. And the carbohydrate is what the plant can then can use it as stored energy, can go and help it build a bigger plant. And in doing this Calvin cycle, what's going to happen next is that one of the G3Ps is going to be removed. And this one G3P that gets removed from the system is going to help us make glucose later on. And if you look at this image in 3, we made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 G3Ps. So one G3P is going to exit, but 5 of them are going to move on. So 1 is stored, and 5 of them get recycled. Now, in the recycling, let's think about this. Is this an efficient process? We're putting in 3 carbon dioxides, and we make 6 G3P carbohydrates, but only 1 of them gets used to make glucose. That's not really super efficient of a plant. But why does this actually work really well? What do we need in order to perform photosynthesis? The sun and carbon dioxide, and we have plenty of those things. So even though we're doing a lot of Calvin cycles in order to make glucose, plants can do this over and over and over again. So we've made our product, but now we need to use our recycled ones to go back to the beginning to that first step. So whenever we take a look at these that get recycled, I just want to, again, count our carbon atoms here. So we have 1, 2, 3 carbon atoms in each of these G3P molecules, and we have 5 of them. And 5 times 3 gets us to 15 carbons. But if you remember, we didn't start with G3P. We started with something else. So we're going to have more energy from the light reactions come in, and this more energy is going to help rearrange the G3P into the RUBP that we started with at the beginning. And you can see here that, again, we had already written there are 5 carbons, but we have 3 RUBP, and 3 times 5 is 15. So we still have all the same pieces. It's just getting rearranged. And then we can start the process all over again. A couple of things as we're going along. We have this ATP coming from the light reactions. After it zaps that PGA into the G3P, this is now going to return back to the thylakoids in order to be used for the light reactions. And the same can be said for this NADP+. Okay, so that is the diagram. We walked through those steps. We can listen to it just one more time. So we have 3 carbon dioxides that enter into the Calvin cycle, and they join onto these 3 RUBPs using an enzyme. But these RUBP plus the carbon dioxide, this step is a very unstable molecule. And what happens is that molecule splits in half in order to make more stable 3-PGA, which again is called 3-phosphoglycerate. Then we have the energy coming in from the light reactions in the form of ATP and NADPH to provide the energy in order to make our 3-PGA turn into G3P. And G3P is a carbohydrate that we can then use to build glucose. Out of the 6 G3P that we make, 1 of them goes to make glucose, while the other 5 get recycled back into the Calvin cycle. The 5 G3P that get recycled get rearranged by bringing in some more energy from the light reactions in the form of ATP, and rearranges those back into the RUBP that we started the entire Calvin cycle with. And this just keeps going and going and going, fueled by the energy from the light reactions and more carbon dioxide. So if we look under here, it says that 1 turn of this Calvin cycle, we got to store 1 3-carbon molecule called G3P. If glucose is a 6-carbon molecule, how many turns would it take in order to build a glucose molecule? So if we have 3 and we want to make 6, how many times do we have to do this? And the answer would be 2 turns of the Calvin cycle. From three of our carbon dioxides. Now we're going to watch a video summarizing the Calvin cycle, and in the video they use 1 carbon dioxide as what we start with. So they're going to use just 1 carbon gets produced. So in the video, they're going to talk about how it takes 6 turns of the Calvin cycle in order to make glucose. But again, they're just starting with 1 carbon dioxide instead of our 3. So the way that we have this one drawn, it only takes 2 turns of the Calvin cycle. So right now I want you to pause the video, and while you pause the video, what I want you to do is answer the 8 questions on the next page that have to do with photosynthesis. So pause the video right now, take a few minutes to answer these 8 questions, and then you can come back. Okay, welcome back. Let's review all of photosynthesis, not just our dark reactions here. So the first question asks, what are the reactants of the light reaction in photosynthesis? So what does it take to perform photosynthesis in the light reaction part? Well, if we take a look at the entire equation for photosynthesis, the entire equation for photosynthesis is 6 carbon dioxide plus 6 water create glucose, C6H12O6, plus 6O2. So which parts of this reaction do we need in the light reaction? In the light reaction, we need the water, right? If you remember, the water is what provides the electrons to go through the electron transport chain. And what provides the energy for the light reaction is sunlight. So our reactants, we can say water and sunlight. If you remember, we kind of put sunlight over our arrow in the past. So what do we make in the light reaction? Well, we make this waste product. Luckily for us who breathe it in, we make oxygen. But the plant doesn't even really need oxygen, right? That's a waste product for the plant. So why does the plant perform the light reactions? Because that's where the plant makes the 2 forms of energy required for the dark reactions, which is NADPH and ATP. And we can put, like, this is our energy for the Calvin cycle. Okay, so then what are the reactants of the Calvin cycle? Well, what reactant didn't we use yet? That would be the CO2. Carbon dioxide is what's providing the carbon. And then also, we needed that energy, NADPH and ATP, that we made in the light reactions. And what do we make in the Calvin cycle? Well, our other product, C6H12O6, and we make that from the carbohydrate G3P. And if we're using 3 carbon dioxides, then we need 2 turns of that. Okay, some more review questions. How does water enter the plant? Enters the plant through the roots. And what about carbon dioxide? That's taken in by the leaves. And you could be more specific and say the opening in the leaves. If you remember, the opening in the leaves are called the stomata. And oxygen, because it's a product of our light reaction takes place in our leaves. So that's where the oxygen also leaves the plant, in the leaves, through the stomata. And last but not least, where does the glucose go? And more specifically, where does it go in an apple tree? What do the plants use it for? Well, they use it for food. They use it to store energy. And in an apple tree, where does that energy go? Well, first, we need to build up the tree, right? So it can build the tree, helps the tree grow taller. But then that extra energy goes to help grow apples. So in a good season where an apple tree gets a lot of sunlight, it gets a lot of water, it can make a lot of apples. But maybe in a drought, when it doesn't get as much water, or if it was really cloudy and it didn't get enough sun, it's going to focus more on storing that energy and building up the tree. And that might be a season where we don't get as many apples from the tree. All right, thanks for watching this video.